Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with another Isaac Asimov short story. Now, this story made its original appearance in the In-Flight magazine on American Airlines. It was called American Way. That sounds nice and patriotic, doesn't it? Well, needless to say, next to professional journals connected to particular corporations and so forth, this has probably got to be one of the most um, ephemeral sources of anything. Try to find one of those, forget it. You can't. So, the story, however, was thankfully gathered up into the complete robot, and that is the only way we have it today. Okay. The story was called True Love, and it's our first Multivac story in quite a while now. In fact, I think we're almost down to the end of all the Multivac stories. There might be 2 or 3 more out. I think we're almost done with them. But this is a Multivac story. And it's told from the standpoint of a computer program that must be artificially intelligent because it thinks it's alive, and it calls itself Joe, and its maker, sort of like a dog talking about its owner, is a guy named Milton. And Milton's your typical lonely heart person who's he's, I don't know, pushing 40, I think, never been married, but he's one of the super great programmers from Multivac, and he creates this really stupendous program. We go sifting through all of what Multivac knows about everybody and everything and who they are and what they're doing. I mean, Multivac knows it all. And he programs this program somehow, whatever device barriers would have been placed to make these sorts of things impossible. He's able to go around these things. I mean, he's that smart. He's able to do that, and he gets all kinds of information on all the population, and he wanted to find out. He's trying to find the perfect woman. Okay. So he says, well, all right, you have data on the entire planetary population. The numbers given, by the way, add up to about 7 billion and change. So we're looking at, I guess if we were to look at it realistically, what would be fairly contemporary times. Somehow, out of all 7 billion human beings on the face of the Earth at the time, or out in space, I would assume whatever's out there, Multivac would keep track of that as well. He has records of it, and he says, okay, now, first of all, eliminate all the guys. Clearly, this person is not gay, not interested in going that way. He wants he wants a born girl. Okay. Then he says, get rid of those who are older than this and younger than that, and so forth and so on. He figured a good arbitrary set of lines. Sounds a little familiar to myself, actually, I should say. All right, nobody over 40, okay. And nobody under 25. Okay. So, obviously, eliminate the ones who married somebody. And he also chose to eliminate the ones who had children and so forth. However, and an IQ less than 120. Apparently, Multivac has IQ measurements on everybody. So that can be just, okay, IQ less than 120, gone. You say, height criteria. Yeah, and so on and so forth. Going through, seems like an awful lot of the guy's limitations were on what the person looked like. At one point, he decides no red hair. So arbitrary decisions like that, you never know what you might lose when you make that kind of decision. But I guess he was one of those who couldn't handle that. Some people can, some people like it, and other people, like this Milton character, cannot. So, anyway, one thing and another, he finally gets it down to 235 women. And then he's now down to trying to find ways to zero things in further. Well, out of all of that, he has them send holographic pictures of these so that he can see them. Because, after all, you kind of want to know, what somebody's going to look like. Somebody can have all the right proportions and descriptions and everything. I mean, he didn't say this, thankfully, though I wouldn't be surprised if he had measurements as part of his criteria. What does she weigh? What's her, what numbers measure or figure, blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, this doesn't go into that. Maybe he did that, but it's not mentioned. There's a lot of things not mentioned. Maybe, hopefully not, but whatever. So he had all these kinds of criteria. He's narrowed it down to these few. He has them looked at in more detail by Multivac, psychologically, or what they look like. And he manages to pick out 8 of them, and actually has Multivac arrange for them to have some sort of career or job opportunity that brings them where he can get to know them. Apparently that's considered illegal, but Multivac obliges because he's so able to program it so smartly and cleverly that it gets around the protections and lets him do that. And he gets to know these 8 women a little bit and quickly discovers there's a very major thing he left out. Namely, are these women of the sort to want him? I mean, what's the point of finding the perfect person and they look at you and it's like, well, I need you like a fish needs a bicycle. Or a bicycle needs a fish. So what do you do? Well, then he had to go back to the rest of his remaining 227 of the original 235. Goes through all of them. And apparently, having set that kind of criteria, look for mental interests and commonalities and so forth. And the ending's kind of unusual. Let's just say the computer at some point has to kind of turn the guy in. Not totally. For reasons that I think I will not break, I won't violate as a spoiler. But the computer knows of something that Milton had done before. He brings that out and gets him arrested. But meanwhile, there's this girl that's been discovered who is really, really, really perfect. And it even has a name for her, but it barely matters. It's a name. But the thing is, the program has been programmed to think like Milton, so that it can evaluate a woman to see if she'll think like Milton. There is a commonality between Milton, the girl, and now this very, very artificially intelligent program, Joe. Well, I won't spoil the whole thing, but it is kind of interesting to see Multivac once again. And that's what I have on that story. It's a cute little story. And that's all I have to say on that one. Thanks a lot.